What do you think would be like a myth about looking for jobs and job searches today?
So there are existing resume builders. We've had cases where we've had 4 or 5 resumes that look exactly the same.
I'm so happy to have you join us for our first ever episode of Journey to the Job. Has it ever happened that, in the past when you were being interviewed, you got asked a question that today you feel that, that question was excellent. It would have engaged me really well.
Oh man.
I should be asking this.
I at one point was trying to get a job in consulting, and I did do management consulting for a while, but consulting interviews can be very interesting because it's about case study based.
Correct.
So I got asked a question which was so interesting once, which was how many tubes of toothpaste are consumed in Nigeria every day?
What?
And I was like, I have no idea. But you can actually answer that. Or the other question was how many tennis balls can fit into a Boeing 747? Stuff like that. It's great. It makes you think, right?
It does. Did you ever repeat it with anybody?
I did for a while, but I also realized it's a bit of a... Yeah, out of context, that question kind of looks a little bit out of... you need to be that mindset and doing for a particular role.
That's true. Agree.
But that said, now that you mention it, I think I should ask that question in interviews. To see how people will start to answer it.
Yeah. What is your go-to question you ask for sure in an interview?
Usually, do you have any questions for me? I usually, a lot of times I may or may not be the first person interviewing someone. So if I'm not the first person, if they've spoken to a bunch of other people, I'll usually start with, so what do you have? What questions? You've spoken to a bunch of people, what questions do you have for me? And it's a risky one because sometimes people have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But sometimes people have no questions, which is also a bit of a red flag.
Got it.
Yeah. But I don't have a go-to question. I usually will start with tell me about yourself and then see how well people go into that and then kind of dive in and out. That's really what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think tell me about yourself is a very tricky question. I think people take it very lightly.
Yeah, you're right. Some people would like to start with, I grew up when I was a child. I went, well, this literally happens sometimes. And I'm like, boss, I don't really care, or that's not really relevant.
Yeah, they take it very lightly. And I think a lot of times people don't realize what is needed out of it.
Yeah.
Out of that question. Like, what are you looking to understand?
The idea of first impressions is very true in an interview.
For sure.
And sometimes it's as... it's as simple as your handshake. I mean, this is being very superficial in some ways, but it's about, look, you are sort of going through a process for a lot of, so non-verbal communication does play a part, particularly for some roles.
Yeah.
So first impressions, unfortunately, do play a part, and it can be changed, but as somebody who's on the other side and interviewing, you need to understand that people are, in the first 5 seconds, they've already made a judgment on you, and people have biases.
Yeah.
And as an interviewer as well, you need to be aware of what your biases are.
Yeah.
But most interviewees don't realize that happens, right?
What do you think would be like a myth about looking for jobs and job searches today?
Yeah, so obviously this depends on who you are and your level of experience,
right?
Kind of job you're interviewing for. But I think one of the things that doesn't work well is a spray and pray, right? I would go as broad as possible and apply to every job and see what something will work for me. And the opposite of that is applying for a few, but making sure that your application is very relevant for that job. So for example, your CV is slightly different based on what that job needs, or you have highlighted a certain experience that might be more relevant for that company. Those kind of things, I think people don't do enough, but it could have a big impact.
Yeah, it should. It's actually recommended.
Yeah.
That you tweak your resume.
People are lazy, though.
Job, yeah. It is work, huh? I mean, it is. Still work to pull up your resume and update it. I think it's also the mental work. It's about deciding that, I have to update my resume.
Yeah, updating resumes.
I think it's the mental journey from
Yes, so there are existing resume builders. We've had cases where we've had 4 or 5 resumes that look exactly the same, like literally word for word, every experience is the same, and we had to figure out who's the real deal here.
That's
All of
because they're using the AI writing assistant.
They all worked at the same company, applied. This is a large company, so they were one amongst. They all applied for.
Oh no.
They all applied for the same job,
Yeah.
and their resumes literally read exactly the same. It was hilarious. So they used one of these like generic resume builders, but didn't bother to edit it, obviously, because they thought they're the only ones doing it.
Yeah. So now that you're a CEO today, and a CEO for a while, but still, what say would have been like? And I'm sure there are times when you're the one getting resumes on your table, and you have 30,000 things to do in a 24-hour day. Out of that pile, what kind of a resume will stand out for you, like for sure?
I don't typically what actually really stands out for me, like I said, going back to the idea of first impression, is what does that introduction look like? In the sense that if you're writing to me and I can help you with a job or an opportunity, how are you introducing yourself to me so that it's relevant for me to actually take action on it? A lot of times people will write and say, hey, so-and-so, I've been following you. Here's my resume. Please see if you can find me an opportunity.
Yeah.
I have to do all the work to read your resume and understand what your strengths are or what your background is.
Yeah.
I have no time for that.
Yeah.
So tell me what I can do. Tell me why I should care about who you are and how I can help. And you've done 80% of the work for me, and it's easy for me to take action there.
Yeah.
So that's...
brings me to my last question to you.
Yeah.
Back then, when say you, I, and others like us were looking for jobs, something like personal brand didn't exist. Today, there is a certain importance that is being given to personal brands in general.
Yeah, totally.
What is your take on that? What do you expect people applying to jobs to have a personal brand across LinkedIn, or do you feel like it's a good to have, but
I think it depends on the kind of job. If you are in a role where you are needing to either interact externally or, let's say you're a function like marketing where your job is to amplify a brand for a brand or a company, doing it with yourself, I think, is a great testament to your skill.
Yeah.
Design is another example where people create portfolios and, it's a reflection of how passionate you are about that area of work. There are certain roles that don't need it. Quite honestly, I don't think it's essential for someone unless they are in that space that needs them to have it.
Yeah.
For example, there are if you're applying for an SEO job, or if you're running an SEO agency and you don't show up in search results, that is a problem. So that's what I'm trying to... I'm trying to give you an analogy that if your personal brand is required...
it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It is.
If you're someone who's in social media marketing, I would expect that you're active on social media.
Active on social media page. Yeah.
But apart from that, not really. It does help though, I think. It helps to know who the person is.
Trend at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to opine on things. It's there.
That's true.
It's there, right? People are thought leaders in their own right.
Yeah.
And is this something that you plan on kind of endorsing across people who are planning to become leaders tomorrow in their field?
I think if you're a business leader, you're sometimes the face of your brand or your face of your company. So you are equally in the limelight or in the minds of your customers as your companies. And it's important to be out there and talk about your views and be heard and make sure that you have a point of view that can, make a statement.
Right.
So I think in those cases, it makes sense.
Well, thank you so much, Vikram. I think this was such a fun chat.
Yes, I'm glad we did this.
About our journey to the job.
Thank you.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, thanks.